Hey folks, welcome back to Only the Best Fantasy Novels. My name is Robin, and today I want to talk about Divided Allegiance, the second novel in the Deeds of Paksenarrion trilogy by Elizabeth Moon. Um, this I was not prepared for this book. Like this book is rough. um, so it's the second in Elizabeth Moon's military fantasy trilogy featuring Paksenarrion, who in this book she's left her she she's given the opportunity after years of service to leave her commission in Duke Phelan's army and travel and basically explore this storyline that's been growing throughout the first novel with her connection to Gerd and these powers that she seems to have, that no one except a guardsman should have. So what we end up having in this book is Pax setting out essentially to undergo the training to become a paladin. Um, and it's a very meandering book. She has like a series of adventures that she goes through over the course of this book. Um, and it's a pretty brutal book. Like in addition to the whole training sequence at this army school that she goes through as part of the paladin training, like she gets embroiled in this quest to discover a lost stronghold, and it leads her to a very dark place. She undergoes some absolutely brutal things, and once again, this is the aspect of the books that for me make these books truly military fantasy. Like Elizabeth Moon doesn't shirk away from dealing with some pretty heavy topics, and in this one we deal with trauma, we deal with PTSD, we deal with traumatic brain injury, and these kind of things. Like Pax undergoes some serious stuff in this book. Like she as part of it, she has to she the ending of this book was it was pretty it was pretty heavy to read about because it captures what happens to so many veterans after they come back home from, like, in America at least. It captures what happens to so many veterans after they come back home and they've been used up by the country and essentially thrown aside. They don't have the support system, they don't have um, they struggle to reintegrate into life, and they're met by a less than forgiving populace um, to deal with that. And it's rough. It's rough reading. Like I honestly, I this book felt like a gut punch for me just as a regular reader. I can imagine how hard it must hit for someone who has like a military background, who could actually, like, who may have first hand experiences with these kind of things that Pax goes through. It's a pretty rough book. Um, but at the same time, it manages to be very fun along the way. It manages to be very entertaining. Like Pax, obviously, as years as a veteran, she has skills that kind of allow her to stand above and beyond the regular cadets. But at the same time, it it forces her to kind of become a bit more introspective and re-examine her life, because just because she's done certain things it doesn't mean that there's not more to learn. And this is something that she understands, because this is one of the major things that even draws her to the Fellowship of God in the first place. Like she tells them she wants to learn war, and not war in the sense of combat skills, but the craft of war in terms of like conducting sieges and technology and these kind of things, tactics. That's the general idea. Um, but in addition to that, like that whole, I hope I didn't spoil the story. I don't think I did, because they honestly this is one of those books. Like even if you know what the like how it ends, it's the journey that really that packs the weight and not necessarily the destination. Um, Aside from all of that, we do get an expansion of the more fantastical elements of this world. Like in the first book, it was very much Pax as essentially a junior member of an army. There wasn't that much. There wasn't that quite so much fantasy elements to it. Like there was some towards the end in the different battles when paladins took to the field and they had this supernatural threat to face and these kind of things. So there was some there, but nothing in the way of how this book plays out, in that we meet more races, we get to understand their cultures, how they operate within Elizabeth Moon's Paksenarrion, within Paksenarrion's world. Um, and we learn a bit more about the societal dynamics and these kind of things. So there is a bit more expansion, a bit more delving that is fascinating, and it does set the stage for something that happens after this book, within the third book, which I actually just finished reading. I'm only now getting to sit down and film what my thoughts on the second book, and it is a bit tainted by what I know happens in the third book, but like I said, this world building that happens in this book, it does serve a very big purpose because it introduces some concepts that play a big part in the third book. But I think one of the most, I think by the end of this book, the thing that really makes it stand out is that this book is the book where Pax, she can no longer really say that she's just a sheep farmer's daughter. Like, she's undergone such an incredible journey by the end of this book that she's much more. She's both lesser and much more, given the situation she is in at the end of this book. Like, she's seen some things, she's done some things, she's been forced to endure some things, and it's made her a very different person than she was when she set out. Like, when she first set out, she just wanted to join a company and have adventures, but now she's a bit more battle weary, a bit more war weary, a bit more torn, and also quite a bit more knowledgeable. And she's essentially started to grow into the type of person that is capable of being a paladin of Gerd, of being like this tower of virtue, or whatever, however you want to phrase how the paladins are. That's you do see the seeds of it planted in this book, and it's essentially a character journey that we didn't quite get in the first book, because in the first book, at the end of the day, she was very much, she moved from raw recruit to essentially veteran soldier, and with a little splash of a few other things, but at the end of the day, she still was very much a low ranking soldier, so she wasn't involved in, there was only so much of the higher level happenings that she could be exposed to. This book is where she does start to get involved in things a bit more, as she loses the restrictions of that rank and that position that she held in this world. But like I said, like the real star of the show is just the ending. It's a brutal ending. It's a rough ending to read. Very emotionally powerful, very emotionally intense. Like, it wasn't until I read this ending I just realized how much Elizabeth Moon has managed to utterly captivate me with this character, and just capture me and just make me become so invested in the adventure and in what's happening. Well, honestly, when I picked up this trilogy, like, I knew that everyone considers it like a classic of the genre, but it isn't that widely read, it isn't that widely regarded, and so I thought, I was pretty much stepping into what was going to be just like a classic epic fantasy. But this series, honestly, this series is anything but. It like I mentioned earlier on, it doesn't shy away from dealing with some very serious topics. Both in the first book, like pretty much right out the gate, Elizabeth Moon deals with the big one you would expect to deal with, or you would expect her to address as a writer in the 80s and 90s, where it comes to a woman being put in a vulnerable position where men have more power than her. She deals with that one right out of the gate, and then in this one she just deals with the consequences of the life of a soldier, and she doesn't do it with Pax being, she doesn't do it with gender being a source of, with gender being a factor. She deals with it in terms of what happens to a soldier, So it can apply to anyone. It can apply to everyone. So, like, it was shockingly deep thematic work. Um, it is what it is. Like I said, like I went into this honestly expecting kind of like a classic fantasy adventure kind of thing. I was going to like be okay with, but I didn't expect to enjoy these books as much as I did by the end of the second book, and I like I mentioned, I recently finished reading the third book, and the series is incredible. Now that I know how it's gonna play out, this series it deserves its place as a classic, and certainly a series that should probably be read more, especially if you're into the whole military vibe kind of thing. I guess um, that's a pretty crappy way to put in that, but yeah, if military stories hold your interest and you're a fan of fantasy, then she deals with topics that needs to be addressed in pretty interesting ways. Um, yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about Divided Allegiance. An incredible book, a surprising book because, like I said, I didn't expect to enjoy these books as much as I did. Um, and yeah, I guess that's all I have to say. If you've made it this far into the video, sorry for all the rambling, and thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.